back to the Hype Mind. What are we talking about today, Dan?
Good stuff. First
Good
of all, my
stuff.
name's Danny, and right here we have Drew. We're actually talking about long distance relationships.
Or
How about it?
LDRs.
Yeah, how you entertained some long distance relationships, have you?
I have. I sure have. And, you know, knowing that piece of information, I'm going to start off by saying, don't do it. If you're thinking about it, if you're in one, don't do it.
Very quick answer. Don't do it. Don't do it.
If you don't have much time to watch this video, then we just gave you all you need to hear. Don't do long distance relationships.
Mm-hmm. How about we explain why too?
Stay, we'll talk about why. All right, so yeah, Dan, thanks for throwing me under the bus like that. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so I've been in a couple long distance relationships, and you got to define what you mean by long distance. I mean, I'm talking like hours and plane rides away. Like, I dated a girl who went to school in Georgia while I was in Connecticut. I dated a girl while I was in Alaska, and she lived in Massachusetts. And then I've also dated girls who are several cities away. They're an hour away. They're a couple hours away. I've had women who wanted to date me who are literally in another continent, wanted to be in a relationship even though we were half of a world away. So the opportunity is going to come, yeah, and the temptation is going to be there. Especially if you're a guy, you want to be with a chick, and if you're a girl, you want that. You're going nuts for that guy who just you think he's your soulmate or whatever. Like,
right.
Yeah. So
first of all,
we get you.
Yeah. First of all, you shared with us some different distances. What makes it too far?
It depends on the circumstance, but
for me it depends on the drive.
Yeah, anything you can't drive or within a few hours is long distance, and it's too long distance.
Right.
I mean, even when you're looking at a relationship that's several hours apart, I'd argue that's too long too, but you might be able to work that out. I mean, I know people who commute to work, and I've commuted to work before, hour and a half. I know people who've done 2-hour drives to work or more, like every day. And so, but you ultimately don't want that. You don't really want that in a work scenario. You don't want that in a relationship scenario. You want something where you can cultivate your relationship. The nice thing about a little bit of distance is you'll have space for each other. So I don't think there's anything wrong with a relationship where you both live an hour away or half an hour away or an hour and a half away or 20 minutes away. But
I think that's good. Yeah.
I think the next door neighbor situation is tough because you're too close, and so you want to live with each other, and you're always seeing each other, and then you see each other too much. So,
yeah.
But you do want to go out with someone who's local. You do want to date someone who's local.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's not the only reason you date them. You don't date them because they're local.
Right.
That's one of many reasons, but
right. Well, first of all,
important factor to look at.
First of all, it's super hard. Like people complain about their long distance relationships all the time because it's different. It's hard to make time for each other. It's hard to get together. It kind of defeats the purpose of being in a relationship because you have to be in a yeah, exactly. You have to spend time together, and talking on the phone doesn't count. I don't care if it's every day. I've heard of people who would contact their boyfriend every single day, and they live states away.
Well, Corey talks about how if you're in that situation, it's you can instead of doing in-person dates, you can do Skype dates or whatever. But even that's not really, like Daniel said, the purpose of relationship. You know, you're there to learn and grow, and you're there to spend quality time together, arguably. And I don't think there's anybody who wants a relationship where they aren't going to spend time together. So it's like that should be part of your standards. You know, it's like if you want a good relationship, you need to spend time together. And it's not the same doing it over a Skype date. You know, it's because what do you how do you get to share new experiences? What are you both going to be on your phone on Skype while you're going to a different zoo, or like, or I go to the zoo and you're on the phone trying to live your experience with me through the phone? Like, it's not the same. You can't go on a picnic. You can't go to the movies together. You can't go to the zoo together. You can't go on the, you know, of course you could take vacations and visit each other, and it makes that much more exciting. And the distance makes the heart grow fonder, as they say, but it's not ideal for a relationship that you really want to go somewhere. You know, ultimately, you're in a relationship because you want to potentially spend the rest of your lives together. And right there in that sentence, spend the rest of your lives together. Like, so you need to actually be together, and you need to spend time together. And so you can't do that if there's this big space. Now, understandably, there'll be circumstances where maybe someone has to go off to college for a year in a state far away. But even then, I'd argue maybe it's time to split up. Maybe this is life separating you guys. Maybe it's time one of you moves towards the other.
Well, okay, that brings up a huge point, because people overinvest in relationships all the time. It's you guys have to watch some of our we have a couple one-itis videos, but it's stuck on that still one-itis mentality of like, this is my one person, right? And it's a scarcity mentality where it's like, this is, what do you have to say?
Who you recommended a YouTuber?
No, I said our 2 videos on one-itis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. And with that scarcity mentality, you can't see all the other good options around you.
Yeah.
It's just, it's
well, and it's even more than that, because you know some people will be like, well, I don't want anybody else, you know, or that's not really loving if I'm willing to give up that person, you know, but it's, or that's selfish. There's a lot of good excuses, but ultimately you have to look at the fact that you're not really able to cultivate your relationship very well. You know, this, and sure, you can argue that this isn't the 1920s, and you know, you can now pick up the phone and call anybody you want from anywhere and see them on your phone screen. But it's still not the same thing. It's like my grandmother, she wrote letters to my grandfather because their relationship was long distance, but that was because he was in the war, and so she didn't have a choice.
Were they already married by then?
No, they were dating. You know, so there's certain circumstances where, yeah, you can't necessarily marry your significant other. You know, if your significant other goes off to a combat zone for 6 months, that's a different story. But if you guys are separating for life choices where you can accommodate, you can move, and your life direction is taking you both in different directions, again, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, but it really comes down to, you want your relationship to flourish. It can't do that leagues apart, especially on a long-term basis. You need to be able to spend time together.
100%.
You know, how are you as a guy supposed to romance your woman from the other side of the world?
That's what I'm saying. It's impossible. Yeah.
How are you supposed to share intimate moments? You know, are you supposed to be fun? Like, you're both adults. If this is really something you want, then you guys will find a way to make it work, where maybe one of you temporarily moves out there for a time being. Maybe someone has to leave their job. Who knows?
Right.
Like Dan said, getting stuck
That's
in
an
that
interesting
grind.
point. If you really wanted to make it work, you make it work properly. You actually are
Yeah,
spending time together, right? It's like I said, we overcomplicate relationships. Just make it simple, right? It doesn't have to be somebody thousands of miles away, right? There's plenty of people in your area, and it reminds me of that marshmallow experiment with the kids. The marshmallow experiment.
I don't know it.
You know what
I might.
they do the it's like the delayed gratification experiment where they have kids sit in a room, they give them a marshmallow, they say, if you don't eat this, we're gonna leave you alone. If you don't eat this, we're gonna give you two.
Yeah,
So what I'm saying is there's a I feel like there's a rush for people to get in relationships. People can settle for a long distance relationship. Why? Because it works out. Why? Because it's easy in the moment. And they don't have to go out there and get rejected. They don't have to go out there and avoid conflict or avoid potentially talking to someone that's, you know, not interested in them, or they have to take time to learn to know. So I think there could be an insecurity behind it too.
there's definitely a lot of toxic situations where people don't let go of relationships for bad reasons. Um, but ultimately, I'm inclined to recall what David Dita talks about in his book. If you don't know his work, check it out. Very eye-opening when it comes to relationships, sexuality, and spirituality. But he talks about how every human being has priorities and things that are important to them. But the number one priority of any person with a feminine essence is intimacy, which you're not going to get that in a long distance relationship. And every priority of a person with a masculine essence is their purpose, which
Not
means
the
your
relationship.
purpose needs to come first before your relationship. Even if your relationship comes immediately after, your purpose must come first. And so when you look at that, the priority of the feminine as being intimacy and the priority of the masculine being their purpose, which is very rarely their relationship, you realize if you guys are being separated or forced to live worlds apart and neither of you are willing to compromise, then you're probably not willing to meant to be together. It's probably time to move on.
Hmm. Right. I think it's sometimes a lack of options too. People feel like they can't move on.
Yeah. Well, that's fair enough.
And that it doesn't make sense. It's like why go out and date
Scarcity
someone else,
mindset.
thousands of miles away when you can date somebody who's a couple miles away,
Yeah.
2 hours.
Like you said, you said there's a lot of toxicity where people are insecure about something or are fearful of something, or there's this, like you said, the scarcity mindset where they don't believe they can do better than what they have.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that you should believe that the grass is greener on the other side.
But to not
Obviously,
invest all your marbles in relationships either. Like we invest go back to one-itis, like we think this is our one person, right? And we invest everything into them, and we get lost in the idea of like this is the perfect one for me, right? This is the one I want to, I want to be in a relationship with, and I can't make it work out with anybody else. You absolutely can make it work out with anybody else. You're just intoxicated by the feelings you get from entering into that relationship, right? Those hormones are released. It's like drugs. You feel like you're on a high, so it feels like this is the one for you, but it's not. So, I mean, that's going to
I
wear off. Look at,
would argue that
almost 100% of the relationships out today, the marriages, right? Everybody loses that what do you call it? The
spark.
yeah, the spark, but also the honeymoon phase, right? That's what I
That's
call it, the
wrong.
honeymoon phase. Everybody loses that sense of like this is the perfect one for me, and that is so.
Well, I would
I think
argue it generally comes down to um, going with the flow of life. If you guys are called to move apart, or you guys already find yourself miles apart, worlds apart,
that
and
was a
you're
good
not
point.
willing
Yeah.
to reduce that, then you have to realize that this might be life taking you in this direction and telling you, keep looking, keep moving on. Maybe you keep talking, but you're not in a relationship. You're not
Right.
holding yourself or the other person down. And again, because it's a little different depending on the factors. Daniel mentioned that you don't want to put all your marbles into relationships, into one bag. Put all, in this case, relationships, and like, well, as a woman or as a feminine individual, relationships probably are your priority. Intimacy is your priority again. So it's like, yeah, putting all your marbles is possibly what you should do. So what do you do? Well, are you willing to compromise? Are you willing to move? No, you're not. Then look elsewhere. Like,
Mm-hmm.
don't look elsewhere while you're in a relationship, right? Again, dating
Right.
is for
Yes.
the ideal person, right? Before you get together with them, you're not. Yeah, you're gonna work things out. You're gonna figure
That's
things
why.
out, but like, you don't date to decide you aren't supposed to be with someone. That you don't enter a relationship to figure that out. You might figure that out while you're dating, but usually you figure that out before you enter a commitment phase. You should already know that this person is probably good for you, that it's probably worth your investment type of thing.
Right. 100%. I think we jump into relationships too fast, investing all our marbles when to wait, just wait. And
There's your
and
honeymoon phase.
what do they say? They say play the field. It's you're seeing what's out there. You're not committing to something right away, and it's definitely something that doesn't work out. And I love what you said about going with the flow. It's being reasonable. It's being simple, and you're not overcomplicating things. You're just letting things go. Whatever makes sense. If this person makes sense for you, great. If they don't, if they live, in another country, it doesn't make sense unless the circumstances totally change, right? Maybe they move in, or they not move in with you, but like move, into your country, whatever. So there we go. There's some thoughts. Anything else, Andrew?
Yeah, no, I would wrap it up by saying again, go with that flow. It doesn't, especially if you guys started out near each other and you separated because distance became a factor later on. Someone moved off to go to college, someone moved off for a new job, whatever. You could talk it out, but I don't even think talking it out is necessarily the right thing. I mean, I think sometimes sometimes you may need to discuss it with your significant other and your friends, or the person you're dating, whether you guys are in a relationship or not. But it really comes down to, like, as a masculine person, where are you meant to be? Are you meant to be worlds away from that city that the other person lives in? Hey, then you need to go there and you need to do your mission. As a feminine person, does your drive for intimacy tell you should be with that person, or that you should be patient and keep waiting and looking? Because if that's the case, and you know that your genuine desire for intimacy in your life and connection in that sense as a feminine person is with that person, then you need to go move. You need to go and be okay with losing some aspects of your life to let other aspects grow. And you need to go with the flow. You need to go with the flow of life. There's a distance between you, whether there wasn't or whether there always has been, whether you've met or not. Maybe that distance is meant to be there. And if it is, it's not worth putting a relationship, into the whole picture to try to connect you guys more. Like that doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. It's not the mature or beneficial response. Yeah, that's all I got.
Perfect. All right, guys.
Now, I'll come up with something later.
Of course. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Peace.